What's up, you guys? It's BB Riley. Thanks so much for tuning into the channel. And if you are already wondering where I am definitely not in my house. I've been set loose and I'm out among the world, and forgot my mic, so apologies if you can hear planes and stuff going overhead. But the reason that I'm sitting out here and not sitting in my living room with a guitar in my lap like I should be finishing work is because of the fact that for this particular episode, I didn't want to talk about guitars or gear. I wanted to talk about the other side of your sound, the other side of our sound, which is the venue you're playing in. I mean, there's so many times where we have a tendency of putting all this effort into music and all this effort into, our gear and things like that. And then we forget about the contributions that the room makes, or just the atmosphere that it adds to it. So I wanted to kind of come off the beaten path and get out to a town called Jacumba, California, which is about an hour and a half east of San Diego, and literally so close to the Mexican border that I can see it just beyond the back of the camera, and show you guys, this really fascinating pair of structures that I've always loved and I've always been interested in, but only until recent time have they really been retrofitted and are working in the modern world. And the one that I'm sitting out right now is actually just experiencing its second return to the world, which is the Jacumba Bath House. Now, this particular structure has been here for over 100 years and was once part of a very large, luxurious hotel, which was just across the street. You had this spa, this bathhouse, this luxury resort, and the two of them across the street would give each other business all the time. Now, the hotel, unfortunately, has been torn down. It was torn down somewhere in the ballpark of, I think, about 1953. Which is always kind of baffling to me. When you're in a space that you don't really need a lot of space, or when the land isn't really in high demand because the freeway has moved commerce off the side, why tear down a building? I don't understand why. Anyway, thankfully, they have not torn down the bathhouse. And now, more thankfully, Jacumba as a town is incorporating itself, reinvesting in a lot of its structures, saving its historic structures, and setting up, home base for people on the way through. They got a motel down at the end of the road that they are completely refurbishing, and this bathhouse, and this is the best part, instead of just remaining a ruin or being restored to the point where you couldn't really appreciate its historic relevance, they're just leaving it. And a lot like the fact that we talk about leaving damage on guitars, giving it character, making it anthropomorphic, giving it a sense of life, giving it a sense of vibrance. I feel the same way about structures. Now, granted, nobody wants to live in a house that looks like it's been on fire for 20 or 30 different times. But at the same time, the things that are in our childhood homes that we notice most are the broken things, the top of the banister that comes off in your hand, or the light switch that never quite works. You have to flip it a certain way, things like that. And I love that this is still here. I love that it still has its character. And I love that now they've made it into a music venue. They've run electricity to it. They haven't touched the structure. It has no roof because the roof caved in a fire about 35 years ago. And now what they're using it for is basically an open air venue that they can use during the evenings, summertime, things like that when you've got tourists coming through. And they put on acoustic acts. And a couple people that I know have played here. And, I really like that. I like that they repurposed this place. And they did it in such a way that it retains that weird. It's not like the Whaley House down in Old Town where they refurbished it, and that's really cool. But really, all the timber and paint and wallpaper you're looking at was stuff that was made in the 1980s. It's just kind of a veneer. This is the real deal. I am sitting on asbestos tile right in this moment that has fallen apart. Now, I don't plan on disturbing it, so I don't think I'm going to be in any trouble in a respiratory sense. But I love that there are still pipes sticking out of the floor. I love that, there are still scorch marks in the rafters. Obviously, nobody wishes any harm upon the structure, but I love that all the personality is still there. I love that I'm in Southern California right now, sitting in an open-air music venue, and I could be sitting in Greece. There are just columns that are worn away. The concrete is all bleached out, and there's nothing but dirt front and back. There's no velvet ropes. There's no ticket counters. There's no museum charge. It's just an open structure that is trusted and left to the people of this town. And they're doing fantastic things with it. Every time I come here, you can see more life breathed into this place. So as you come up towards the front of the property, there's actually a line of trees cutting off this little path. But when you stand back, you realize that the dirt being compacted is definitely consistent with something along the lines of a road or some sort of pavement over the years. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this has been never paved, but we're actually sitting at the gate of this spa, in which there used to be 2 lampposts that came up out of these old stone pedestals. So if you can actually imagine, this would have been the driveway up. Now, you would have had mostly horses and Model Ts coming through here, contingent upon the actual time in which that this was being used most. But I just thought that these were cool that they're still here. You've still got these great little lampposts you can kind of walk through and really get a good idea of what it looked like when you were pulling into this place years ago. You know, back when bandstand music was like death metal, and your parents, if they heard you singing Camptown Races, they sent you to a priest to go get exercised. All right, so I thought this was cool enough where I got to show you guys this. This is fun. What this is the pool. So there were actually 2 pools on the grounds, and this was one of them. And this was the original one. There was a second one that was added up the hill and is more massive. Looks more like 1940s, 1950s, where you started to see those competition level pools. But this was more of just kind of like a pool from the 1920s, where it was submerged, it was in ground and everything like that, but it was more of a leisure pool. It wasn't like a lap pool. And that's why we have this guide rail at the corner of the pool, actually dipping down and into the depths of where it would have been. And I always love stuff like this. It's like stairways that go to nowhere, or a fireman's pole that drops down into just solid concrete. It doesn't go anywhere. I used to see those in New York all the time. Or escalators that just were from the 30s and became, you know, stairwells because they just didn't work anymore. But things like this being left out are so great because, you know, they really do tie in. And it's fascinating to just see a handrail just dropping into the earth. Now, if you actually look at the ground around the handrail, you can actually see that the ground's been disturbed there, and it looks like somebody's had a fire pit right there. You know, because this is California, we do have a lot of people who are living outdoors. But if you actually see right over there, you can see what looks like a dirt track that's kind of laid around. And what that is that's the actual deck of the pool, the concrete of the pool that is still underneath the actual soil that we're finding in the valley here. And what's happened is that concrete around the perimeter has made that earth too shallow, so you start to see this ghost line where the vegetation won't grow, or at least won't stay. Okay, so where we're at is a place called the Desert Tower on the east side of that town that we were talking about before, Jacumba. And to get here, you've got to drive up this road it's no longer a county road. It's been a decommissioned county road for, I don't know, about 30 or 40 years. But to me, this place is a little bit different, and it's something a bit more special. And the reason is because, you know, it's 2023, it's about to be 2024, and times have changed. They're very complex now. But when I was here about 15 years ago, I was completely clueless, and I had been pulled into this band, and they were doing really well. And we got booked into a festival, and that festival was called the In-Koh-Pah Festival. It was something that I didn't think existed anymore. You know, when I was a kid, I always was fascinated by Monterey and by Woodstock, Miami Pop, all these fantastic shows and festivals that were held outdoors, and they were devoid of commercialism. There were no banners, there were no Coors Light, you know, adverts on the stage. There was no big Jumbotron, you know, showing you images of, you know, one of the Kardashians drinking a Pepsi. It was none of that. And I always loved that. There was a kind of beauty to the simplicity of that arrangement. I mean, yeah, there were corporate interests involved. They had to get funding. But, you know, those interests were just really fixated, not necessarily on, you know, as much on advertisement as they were as just, you know, getting ticket prices back. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. I thought that the time of just the simple beauty of a festival had come and gone. But then about 12, 13 years ago, I can't remember the exact year, a group that I was with got called, and a bunch of friends of mine who were with different groups, they got called in too. And all of a sudden they got called into this brand new festival, and I had seen it before. You know, there were a couple festivals in Southern California where they would talk about, you know, really bringing the peaceful simplicity back to a music venue, back to a festival. But it never really panned out. It always just wound up being something lighthearted. But this place was different. When you got here, there was no corporate involvement. There were no fences. There was just somebody at the gate hoping that you would give him a bid. And what we inadvertently wound up with here about 2 or 3 times over a period of 2 or 3 years was easily one of the most overlooked and one of the most impactful festivals in San Diego metropolitan, you know, music of the last 20 or 30 years. and it was a festival strictly just for the people. There was no adverts, there was no corporatism, there was no shiny, promotions for it. It was a word by mouth, strictly grassroots festival, and between year 1 and year 3, it went from being a happening to being a big deal. And every year, everybody was just aching to play this thing because they knew that it was going to be them and like 15 to 25 of their friends camping on a hill with a bonfire right up until dawn, and then playing the next day and doing it all over again. Do yourself a favor. Pull off to the side of the road, get your camera out. You're gonna find fascinating weirdness out here. It's beautiful out here. The air is clean. It's hot, but it's a dry heat, so it ain't too bad. It's not like you're sweating in Maine in August. And it's just a great place to be. And places like this deserve to be visited. I mean, how great is this? Look at what we're looking at, How often do you get to see it? Fantastic. Guys, this week, hopefully you guys dug it. I know it's a bit of off the beaten path type of stuff, but I like this every once in a while. It kind of challenges me and pushes me. What the hell? Jesus, with the bird. You were silent a sec. Come on now, stop it. It's just this one bird that's just started freaking out as soon as I ran tape, of course, because... And if I forget to say so at the end of the video, enjoy your holiday. Happy Halloween. I love Halloween. It's my favorite holiday in the whole wide world. And ever since I was 5 or 6, I just couldn't get over it. So, so there it is. Anyway, let's get to business.